Hello everyone. Hello to the viewers of Dataquest, and we continue with our DQ 40 years program and our look to India 2047. So this time we are looking at the subject of finance and tech in India over the last 40 years, and also a bit of looking ahead. And for that we have with us Mr. Thompson P. Gnanam, Managing Director and Global CEO of 3i Infotech. Welcome. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you, Sunil, and thanks a lot for having me. It's always fantastic, and it's also nostalgic with DataQuest. It goes a long time back. I still remember way back in 1993 when I
Okay.
passed out from my India Engineering College, and we're all
Right.
updating our DataQuest. It's nostalgic, absolutely. Thank you for
Oh,
having me.
wow, that's really great to hear. So we look forward to it then. Yeah. So then, since you did talk of, like 1993, so maybe we can, start from the 90s, 80s, and the 1990s. Now, in the 1980s and 90s, there was great resistance to the computers, especially in the banking sector. It was a totally different era. So when would you say that the tech era began, at least in the financial world in India?
Yes, maybe just to put things in perspective and do a recap, it's always
Right,
good to
right.
reflect back also for us.
Sure.
And if you look at the 80s and 90s, in my mind, would be the years where India was graduating from a more of a socialist to a kind of a moving
Right,
towards a capitalist, if I can look at it, or maybe like a
right,
centrist, I wouldn't call it a capitalist, moving
right,
towards a centrist, the way I look at it. And the core elements of the financial sector and the technology sector, in my memory, if I look at it, uh, started off with the kind of revolution in telecom industry, because that's the
right.
backbone of all this. Before we even come into the computer era, I still remember when I was doing my engineering, we used to have all these mainframe systems with green NVS COBOL
Right.
uh, units, Unix, what do I say, terminals, which are absolutely unfriendly to the user. And that's where we were. And in
Right.
the 80s, probably the batch before, we used to have only batch cards in processing in mainframes. But I
Right.
think the beginning point for us would be the modernization of Indian telecom infrastructure way back. I think that's the important change which happened in the 80s. I think it was during the days of Pitroda and all that. I think that's
Right.
when it changed dramatically, and the foundations of this was laid there. Because without the telecom backbone change,
Yeah.
nothing would have been possible. I think that's the clear start point, what I remember. Then we talked about CDOT at those days. If you look at the
Right.
CDOT, one of the first major change. Bangalore started becoming the starting point of our first STP was set up in software
Right.
technology park was set up in Bangalore.
Right.
And I think that gave birth to the pioneers in technology industry, right? From TCS to
Right.
then you have later on, you've got Infosys, and all of them started, coming out of that. I think coming back to the to your question, now in terms of the resistance to change, like
Right.
any industrial revolution, right? There is always resistance to change. I still remember uh, the end of 80s and 90s was the death of the typewriter, and then I remember the 80 machine, the Windows PC starting to come in the mid 90s, because that's the change that killed the green terminals, and we were getting into the nice Windows PCs. And then we were having this more user-friendly Windows interface with the bankers, and we're starting into the local area networks were coming from the entire. This is a big transformation which was
Right.
happening. And like any change, there's resistance to change, because you're all
Right.
used to your typewriters and stuff, and then we are getting into the bankers. I still remember in my entrepreneurial days, we
Mm.
used to have these contracts with banks. I still remember so well in Indian Overseas Bank was my customer those days,
Okay.
and we used to have a system integration contract. I still remember one service engineer came back and said, "Sir, the land is getting down very now and then. We are taking all care." then I realized the core issue was one of the bank staff hated the new computer. So he used to pull off the cable
Oh my
to
God.
ensure that the computer is down. So that's
My
the
God.
level of change management we used to do way back those days,
Right.
right? But then coming to maybe if I want to summarize that from a banking technology perspective, Sunil, I would say
Yeah.
that uh, what accelerated at that point of time is the entire IDRBT in 1996, if I just, for the Institute
Okay.
of Development Research in Banking Technology, because I would say that's the start of it, because that's where
Right.
the true technology transformation started happening in the financial sector way back, actually. And
Okay.
then we spoke about the institute that launched three important technology infrastructures, namely the Indian Financial Networks, which is the Infinet way back in
Right.
1999, if you look at it. For
Right.
me, I think these were very important, what do I say, transformational points in the industry, the way I look at it. And so I think Infinet also was also the first start point for those days in secure transactions. Because today, if
Okay.
you look at it, world has moved on.
Yeah.
But way back then, Infinet was the start point of secure transactions. And uh, I think that is where I would say the 80s and 90s were the formative stages.
Right.
And for us, when you look back, that really helped build the IT services industry also where we are
Right.
today. That is
Right. Right.
and not forgetting the important aspect, I would say also. One more thing is we can never forget 1991 when Indian economy was liberalized because that
Correct.
was a game-changing moment. The reason
Right.
I see it is because that helped us get access to Western technology. We
Right.
had Western organizations, banks coming up into India, starting to come up, set up the back offices here, and that's
Yeah.
how we started learning because that set the stage for us to develop in the 2000s, actually, if you ask.
Right. Right. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for that backgrounder. So that's quite an interesting start. So like you're right, 91 was liberalization. Then 94 we had the national telecom policy, and you said telecom was the backbone. 95 was the internet. 96 again you talked of it being a landmark year. Then you mentioned the IT services industry. So I think that's the next accelerant. We had the Y2K crisis, and enough has been said about the IT services industry. But also, what about the BFSI sector? What changes took place there until the early 2000s?
See, once if you look at it, again, the Y2K again was an important milestone, the way I look at it, because for me, the way I look at it, IT and banking, these are big convergence. And the
Right,
banking industry was the single biggest consumer of technology, if you look at it. And Y2K literally, I would say, um, built the Indian IT industry today. If you look at it, I
right,
always keep saying
right,
every problem is an opportunity. 2000 gave birth to the Satyam, the HCLs
right,
of the world place, and transformed the TCS and Infosys to the next level, if you look at it fundamentally,
right,
right? Because what it did, it gave access to our engineers to work in the American banks. I'm just saying example to figure out the entire
right,
vertical, but that built the captive knowledge for us to build on the banking industry itself.
right,
If you look at it. So that was a very important change. And the Y2K crisis also helped us, I would say, move from, I would call it the death of the mainframe, the death of the, even today, I'm just using it as symbolic,
right,
but
right,
if I'm the death of the mainframe or the AS400 and then moving into the more modern day computing,
hmm,
I think that was a big transition point. So
right,
I'll give you a small example. If you look at TCS banks today, as a platform,
yeah,
one of our Indian, we're proud about it, right? And as one of our, like, in 3I, we used to have our own, banking platform, which we sort of, but if you look at it as a
okay,
premium, like banks, for example, as a benchmark,
yeah,
it was way back in 2004 is when TCS launched TCS Banks. And at that point of time, That was again still in MBS COBOL in the Unix servers actually. The only good thing was it is graduated from a mainframe to a more modern Unix server or a Sun Solaris or whatever. I'm just saying an example. So technology
Right.
graduation was happening at that point of time, and I think I would say the important key points I would call the adoption of core banking systems started because
Right.
the whole philosophy of core banking started after Y2K because this started streamlining the operations. It started improving efficiency of the bank because Y2K was a reset, correct?
Right.
And then you
Correct.
setting the banking industry and the technology industry for this millennium. I think it's a very important aspect, and the bank started looking at it very differently. Second, the acceleration of internet. If you look at it, the online banking started evolving. Mobile
Right.
phone banking started evolving. The payment system started, going. Even if I go back in 2000s, we introduced the NEFT, and the RTGS started evolving. So fundamentally, these are
Mhm.
the building blocks of the online banking, the modern digital banking, and all that started happening in that early 2000s because that's a very important transformational stage for the industry itself. The way I look at it.
So I think our viewers have got a clear background of like the evolution and where it came from. So I think it's a good time to talk of what is the status of the fintech industry today, and are what about the BFSI players and the startups? Are all those robust? And what are the some of the current innovations that you're seeing in India today in this field?
See, today, if you ask me, I'll give it purely as an industry. Maybe even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, we would say the Western world was far ahead. Okay.
Correct.
And we were
Yeah.
catching more. But
Yeah.
I think what we have done is with all the strong foundations which we laid way back in
Right.
this,
Correct.
we really accelerated very fast. As a country,
Yeah.
we have really accelerated very fast. This
Yeah.
phenomenal innovation which is happening in the startup ecosystem today.
Yeah.
It's fundamental. It's just exciting that so many fintechs, so many companies are just able to pick up a problem and solve it. It's
Yeah.
amazing how hyper focused and micro focused they are also. It is not like
Yeah.
broad based. They are able to solve one particular business problem. They are super
Yeah.
focused in what they are doing, and most of them, the amazing part is all of them think I'm a technology company. That's a phenomenal stuff. They don't. They say
True.
I'm a technology company in the core who's trying to solve a business problem, and
Right.
that's a amazing part. The second thing I'm also seeing is how companies are also the technology is leveraged today, right? So, for example, it's all
Yeah.
available, components,
Right.
correct?
Right.
In the good old days, we had to build everything bottoms up. Today, it's a question of
Right.
orchestration. As long as we are clear about a business problem, we'll be able to quickly orchestrate a solution. So all components are available, right? For example, there are billing components available. There's a digital platform, there's an e-commerce component available. It's all available. But I have to be
Right.
very clear what I'm solving, and it's just very
Mm.
quickly I can kind of integrated. Second, also if you look at architectures also today, it is all leading into more microservices or an API led. In simple English, it is all configurable. It's all plug and play. So it's all how do I say ecosystem driven.
Right.
Nothing is a secret anymore. Only your
Yeah.
idea is a secret. Everything else is just available. So if you ask me to summarize that point, I would say digital payments, I think we should be really proud of as a country. I think we've come
Right.
a long way in terms of digitizing it. On a lighter note, I was telling some colleagues in the Western world,
Yeah.
even if unfortunately somebody who's asking for arms in my company, in my country, carries a QR code today. So that's the advancement of
Correct.
technology today and the adoption of technology, right? That's a fact.
Yeah.
That is, we should probably pat ourselves for where we are today. And availability of lending and credit fintechs are phenomenal. You look at the
Yeah.
amount of lending fintechs who are able to kind of bridge a gap between the traditional bank versus traditional
Yeah.
NBFCs to a particular segment, whether it is
Right.
a small and medium segment or MSME segment is there. Even 3Is and all, we are now working with some of the government institutions also to do some of the technology at the back end
Right.
to help the SMEs. So this kind of, it's very exciting that, the transformation and the change is happening so much. Finally, also, if you look at it in India, if you look at it right now, um, insurance is a great opportunity from Allied, massive, because, the way I look at it, we made huge progress in the last decade in getting the unbanked bank. That's a phenomenal stuff. If you look
Right.
at it, some of the like the government of India's initiatives, which are great. For example, the entire Digital India initiatives. We are talking about Ayushman Bharat. All
Right.
these stuff, which are really driving the country in this direction, which are pretty exciting, the way I look at it.
Yeah. So I think like again we have like covered a great ground. India has covered a great ground in the last 30 years, and we are at a very strong position like online payments, digital payments, and all. But still, sidetracking a bit, there are also a lot of issues which we have to be very careful about. Like cyber security, data privacy, data sovereignty. I mean, everything is on the cloud. So maybe if you could speak about these issues.
No, no, absolutely. See, because see, every era or phase has their pluses and minuses, and as technology evolves, because see, today what's happening? If you reflect back 30 years, the pace at which technology has grown. We used to call the click generation. The children
Right.
were born clicking a mouse. Then we got the touch generation, who are
Mm.
born with the touch. Now we are in the generative AI generation. So the
Right.
generation is changing. Maybe this is the era of chat GPT, of
Right.
cognitive computing and AI. So there's no end to it. So I think the biggest issues in front of us, as you rightly said, is cybersecurity. And as a country which is fast growing to a developing, as a developing nation, which is becoming a developed economy, uh, these issues will start cropping up because
Right.
have to strengthen our data privacy and data sovereignty laws. Cybersecurity is going to be a huge issue for ourselves.
Mm.
So fundamentally, I think, as I, for example, the Indian government also is working on these aspects, where they're
Mm.
looking at the Indian Computer Emergency Response Team. We are moving in the right direction. We have a data privacy. The protection bills are now being passed in terms of stuff like that. Data residency bills are coming out across the
Right.
world. Even from a technology perspective, now everybody's talking about the sovereign cloud.
Yeah.
That's the new buzzword. In fact, we
Right.
launched our sovereign cloud in Malaysia, Sunil. So, what is
Okay.
the sovereign cloud? The sovereign cloud is that the data center sits in that land. That's about it.
Right.
Fundamentally, so
Right.
it's sovereign. And then we have a psychological satisfaction that it's secure because it's within your boundaries.
Right.
But from a technology perspective, uh, the more and more secure access, secure entry technologies, and the technology also is moving from hardware dependent to software dependent. So the
Okay.
HDM to SDN, if I look at it, I'm using too much technology, I'm trying to kind of reduce it.
Right.
That's what
Right.
HDM to SDN. But if you look at it, that's how the world is moving,
Yeah.
right? And what is also happening is it's all getting cognitively enabled. It's
Right.
not. So that's the problem today. That the power of AI and power of cognitive computing, if used for the right positive outcome, it is good, but it can be used for negative outcomes. So what
Right.
happens is we have to now think ahead of the curve to
Yeah.
protect us from cybersecurity threats, of
Yeah.
being able to proactively predict all this. And that's where also, if you look at from a banking perspective, I see the adoption of blockchain, Sunil, will be the important aspect of it, because I feel the convergence of blockchain, edge computing, and cognitive computing is inevitable, because these things cannot happen independently, because they need to work together. Blockchain will give you smart ledgers. That's fantastic. We can reduce the chances of bad transactions, and we can have the trails, we can have the blockchains. That's good. then can we also protect the edge? Because the cybersecurity weakest link is the edge predominantly, the edge devices. So blockchain edge security becomes extremely critical. That's the second point, actually. The third thing is, can we overlay intelligence at the edge, which is more AI and more cognitive? So the clear trend is convergence of AI, edge computing, blockchain is very important to provide data security and data protection and data governance and the overall cybersecurity.
Yeah, so it's nice to see that all the problems that might come up, all these emerging technologies are going to be the solution for that. So I think we are poised in a good way in
Yeah.
that aspect. Yeah. So also, like I was saying, like DataQuest has completed 40 years. So 40 years back, IT was just being born. Similarly, it's quite interesting. Even 3i Infotech is 30 years old, and as you mentioned, that is the time when fintech was also born, you could say, in India. So I'd like to know what has been your journey like in those 30 years.
Interesting because, see, 3i Infotech was born out of a bank 30 years ago.
Right.
3i was ICICI Infotech. So we always say we are born out of a bank. And uh, so that was the evolution of 3i Infotech because fundamentally it became the uh, ICICI's IT arm,
Right.
technology and technology operations, IT arm. It's been quite a journey. 3A has gone on ups and downs. We got listed way back in 2005. Then we went on acquiring, we were almost close to $1 billion in 2008, which is pretty sizable because at that point of time, we had multiple products. We had a good run, but unfortunately, there's ups and downs. So we went through a bad patch. And then I think 2 years ago, that's when me and my team took over, which is what we call the new 3i today, just to differentiate ourselves, because every company has to kind of reboot, reposition. That's where we are. So 2 years ago, the organization had sold off the products division. So most of our products were in the BFSI space. We sold it off. We became a debt-free company. So it's like we were reborn as a new 3i. And that's when we came in. We had the services division, and now we are building again. And we are very, very actively competing back as a challenger because we have a rich legacy with us. We have deep domain knowledge in the BFSI, which we are leveraging to our advantage, and now trying to see how we can go to other industries. We are now, in the last years, we've progressed a lot. We got working with IIT Tech Park in Chennai in building cognitive computing services. We have an Oracle COE in a tier 3 city down south. So we have made our progresses. We have gone into cloud first. So kind of two, three tracks. One is building on our legacy and trying to see how we can going beyond the banks as well. We are building in the telecom, media, entertainment world as well. Trying to see how we can work with telco customers to take some of our cybersecurity products to the market. Like we have our own product called USASE. So it's very interesting journey, Sunil, for us as well. The world is changing, and even globally also. For example, we are specializing in the mid-market space, even in Europe and US. We focus on the mid-market banks. We have our own small niche space and try and see how we can, transform. Even right now, there are huge headwinds globally for the Western world. If you look at it, US especially, massive headwinds. The industries are, the banks are crumbling. Very quickly. So it's a very interesting time where smaller players like us, for us, I personally feel it's an opportunity for a smaller player like 3i today to evolve as a challenger. So I always tell my teams, year 2000, as I said, is every recession or every problem as an opportunity. And I firmly believe 2000 was the year of where we had a Satyam or a HCL catapult, an Infosys catapult. 2008 was Cognizant. And I said 2023 is the opportunity for 3i Infotech because every problem or a resistance gives an opportunity. So we strongly believe it's a great opportunity for us. So,
So that's really great, and it's been a really fascinating journey for Indian Infotech and also 3i. So I think at this stage maybe we're ready to look a bit to the future. So like India is looking at very ambitious things. 100 years after independence, India 2047. So are we ready to realize the vision of India 2047? What are some of the fintech innovations in both the industry and government that will take us there? Schemes like UPI come to mind. You have already mentioned digital payments. So maybe if a little forward looking, where do we stand?
We look at it, it also, you spoke about some of the emerging problems and technology. So what I would say that for us to continue in this path of growth, maybe we should learn from the mistakes of the Western world. If you look at it, it's very, very important, because we cannot create the same mistakes. So what I would recommend is we should build it for the future. We should be already at a GDPR grade. I'm just saying the example. So Western world has got a lot of good practices, if you ask me. But still, if you look at it, some of the big banks, the banks cannot fails. I'm just saying it's an example. So we should learn from it and then build these strong foundations which will help us to accelerate. The biggest problem and challenge for us is we are a 1.4 billion size country. This is massive. Now, how do you manage? That's why I keep saying, Sunil, even within us, we run a project called RailTel, which is monetization of Wi-Fi with the RailTel. That is Bharat. That is not India. So now, how do you get India and Bharat together is the single biggest opportunity. Now, whatever works for India might not work for Bharat, but we'll have to figure out a way of how to make Bharat included in this. Then I think so. Then this country is going to grow in very, very massive way. Because for us today, a problem is all of us only look at Bharat, sorry, India. And India is just 10, 15%, not even 15, is 10%. Bharat is 90%. So we need to build whatever technology, solutions, or whatever it is, has to be for Bharat. So once we keep it for Bharat, then that's a fantastic model in terms of scale, in terms of socioeconomic growth. It is inclusive growth for everybody, and that is most important. The way I look at it, and that is where I'm saying we need to probably democratize technology, democratize these opportunities in front of us, so that we can have a more inclusive overall growth for the country.
So I think it's been a really great ride for India so far, and it looks like another great ride ahead. So I'd like to thank you for explaining both the past and future in such an interesting way. I'd like to thank you for that.
Thank you, Sunil. Thanks a lot for this opportunity, and thanks a lot, Dataquest. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.